have the courtesy to give him a green light. So at least he knows in the glider that I see you and I'm making a hole for you. Now Roanoke's not like an O'Hare someplace where we have a lot of traffic, but it sure would be nice if I give you a green light and I know that the jet traffic on a 10-mile final, I'm going to do something else with him. And that lets you know, hey, he's seen me and he knows I'm going to land. And again, that's communication. I'll be glad to answer any questions. Like I say, I did have the opportunity to go with you and I really enjoyed it. It's the bare, true flying that they're really out there, and I really enjoyed it. Yes?
We have one glider with a transponder. Is it possible to get a designated number for transponder?
Well, if you give us a call and tell us that you're going up, we'll assign you a transponder code, and that way we can watch you. That works great, because we'll know when you're up there, and what we'll do is we'll give it to you, and it'll be good all day long. So anytime you would go up in that glider, it would tag up and we'd know immediately who you were. Does it have altitude encoding also?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. See, that would be great.
Might not be a bad idea, because you can see what altitudes we are achieving.
Yeah.
Maybe we can establish even the code in the morning already.
That's what I'm saying, is if you give me the phone call, I can put you into our system. And what we'll do is we'll put a tag on you. Well, normally when an airplane takes off and he lands, that tag will drop off. But I can adjust that tag to where it won't drop off. It just, when you go below coverage, it just stays there. And literally that tag will sit over Newcastle. It's another way of letting us know, hey, if there's glider operation up there.
Is there a key word for that? Or
Just call and tell them what you want to do.
Okay.
Please.
Yes.
You were talking about departures for Northwest being the big one. I think most of us will say that the Northwest flights coming in from Detroit on arrivals are the ones we see the most issues with, as they're coming in just southwest of us and descending. I came in on a flight last spring that they gave a visual to 6, and they descended straight in over Catawba Hospital, down across the ridge, and they were not 7,000 feet coming through Newcastle. But that's the one, I think for most of us will say, is the arrival of Northwest from the Detroit is now the one that we see the most problems with, because we don't see them coming quick enough.
Right.
Departures we have a little bit more time with. But
and that's the one thing I didn't mention, is you're right, is they're going to be 7,000 feet until they see the airport. But once they say they have the airport in sight, I'm going to clear them for a visual approach, and it's their key to descend. Now, the other thing we didn't talk about is every now and then we land 15, which is straight in right over top of Newcastle. And it's a hairy approach, but one day last week we were actually on 15 for arrivals, and most of the airlines were taking it. And a lot of times they won't take it. They'll find a reason not to. Well, they don't like to come across that ridge and duck down. But last week the winds were up enough that they weren't complaining too much. They were taking 15. But you're right, is once they're cleared for the visual approach, the altitude is at the pilot's discretion. That's where it helps if I know you have glider activity up there, because then I can let him know, hey, you got glider activity up to 7,000, 8,500, whatever you think you're going to be that day.
well, we're lucky we do have a check pilot, former pilot in our club who's now a check pilot for Northwest Airlink, and it's notated in their system.
Oh, okay.
As well, but sitting in the back and watching the gliders that they flew by, and the cockpit did not see them, was kind of interesting.
Well, that's the problem, see, is they're not looking for them. And gliders aren't the easiest thing in the world to see. So, yeah, you're right. It's again, communication. Now, I came from flight service before I came to Roanoke. I was air traffic in Charlotte, I was air traffic in Greensboro, then I went to flight service for a while. We used to do a soaring forecast in flight service. And we did it for Cumberland, Maryland, and places up there for Elkins. So I started checking to see if Lockheed's doing soaring forecasts. And all my phone calls came back that nobody knew what I was talking about. Yeah. So when you call your 1-800 weather brief to let them know that, hey, what's the wind going to be and this kind of thing, don't ask them for a soaring forecast, because nobody up there knows what you're talking about. I checked out on soaring forecasts. I never got really good at it. So I thought, well, I'll check and see. But again, like I say, is the secret to it is giving us a heads up that, hey, And like I say, most good soaring days I'm aware of, today would have been a pretty decent day to be out there fighting the fly along the ridges. But a lot of the controllers aren't aware of that. And so if you can let us give us a heads up, and what happens is, I tell the radar controllers, they put a little target there that says soaring in the Newcastle area.
Well, what we've always done, standard operation procedures, the tow pilot's supposed to call y'all on our first tow of the day.
Yeah.
But the phone call is actually better.
The phone call's actually better,
Okay.
because again, what happens is you call us and say, we're doing soaring up here. You're talking to one controller, and he doesn't put a tag there.
Okay.
And 5 minutes later, he gets relieved and he forgot to brief his relief.
Because we have wondered about that before.
Yeah, that's the problem, is when you call on the frequency, you're talking to one controller. If you call the phone, you're either gonna be talking to the controller in charge or the supervisor. And more than likely, when I'm gonna do a supervisor, walk up and I'll say, put a circle around Newcastle, so I know. What we put a 5-mile circle around the airport. And it just sits there all day long. And it just lets us know that there's soaring activity there. That way, when the next controller comes up to be relieved, he looks and he says, okay, there's a circle around Newcastle. They must be soaring. If we know what altitude you're going to, if you know that we're going to be going up to 10,000 feet today because the conditions are really good, we put actually a little 10,000 there, and that way it stays on the scope all day long. So,
That's good.
are there any other questions? Well, like I say, thank you for the opportunity, and I enjoy your activities, and I hope you come up and at least watch us some this summer.
Good. Terrific.
I think I'll call on Bill to come up and talk about paperwork.
Several weeks ago, Gary Neighbor and I were able to go up to Chesterfield to attend a storage seminar up there for all the regional clubs were represented. And one of the first things they did was introduce everybody and explain their club operation, how many have insurance, and number of members, the whole. And I'll tell you, the genius of our founders, that when we went through the operation clubs, they went all the way from tied the day, a safety officer, a launch officer. They had a duty roster. You were fine. And it reflected of the militaristic. But then you contrast that with in Waynesboro, up on the field, take it apart, flight light, and nobody would have nothing. And then the skyline up there had a computer program. The person who entered with this, that they lost. They could not. And then this was given to the reconcile all of his members. It was just we have
Or massa where you have to leave.
it was the
Words
but morning. You know, I'm there, and if he's a but then maybe Peter, and you say, pull out a glider,